doing DOKS today, and so I'll click this Provision DOKS Cluster button, and we'll be asked, where do we want to provision our new cluster? Since we already have an account linked, you'll see it shows up right here, and I can choose the name of my cluster. I'm going to call this new DO cluster, new DOKS cluster, and I'm going to deploy it in New York, as that's where I'm currently located. You'll note here, there is a note about the cluster cost. Kubernetes clusters in general do have some overhead on the infra side, and so there's a warning here about the expected spend on your DO account.
And Johnny, just in regards to the cluster that gets created, the nodes that make up that cluster, how does Zeek decide how many nodes to create?
Yeah, so by default, our clusters, first off, they're open source. Second off, they come with a bunch of baked-in best practices. Part of that is a number of different node groups that allow us to spin up instances of different sizes, but make sure that your default cluster is as small as possible, so that you don't have extraneous spend. Additionally, there are a couple of services that we deploy alongside the cluster beyond the simple cluster services, including Autoscaler, a Prometheus metric server, various services for managing the SSL certs, external DNS, and the network stack on the cluster itself. Zeek is going to configure all of these and use all of these to provide a really simple experience, but there is some overhead in the cluster size because of that.
Cool. Okay, so we're going to have a bootstrap cluster essentially. Because I know for me, Kubernetes is it can be a little bit daunting for people who haven't used it before, and it's just an API at the end of the day. But getting that cluster ready for production, not just development but production, is there's a lot to it. So I think if Zeek is going to sort the certificate management, sort the ingress, then that's less weeks of work potentially solved.
Exactly.